الله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it's very nice to see all of you. May Allah bless you. May Allah accept from all of you and accept from this talk tonight. This talk tonight is on the heroes of Islam, and one of the greatest heroes that we need to learn about, inshallah. Oftentimes in the West, we learn about different heroes, different people due to some contributions that they had. But if you really studied those personalities, probably you wouldn't find something so special about them. You know, if you read about, for example, John Adams or George Washington, maybe they were really special in some particular field, in politics, in law, and in poetry. But very few people can compare, actually these people cannot compare to the Islamic heroes who were complete personalities from every angle. They were scholars from this angle, and they were worshippers at night from another. They were people who went and gave their lives for the sake of Allah, and they changed the course of history. And unfortunately for us as Muslims, we don't really know enough about our true heroes. Probably if I asked you who are the heroes of Islam, some of us might mention the name of a few prophets. And then if we run out of names of prophets, maybe some of the Sahaba, Abu Bakr, Umar, these are the heroes of Islam. Alhamdulillah, no doubt. These are the great heroes of Islam. But what about the history of our religion, 1400 years of heroes, that the scholars and the continuous chain of great human beings that Allah uses in every time and place to fill the world with His light and with His guidance. Perhaps we don't know even their names. So tonight, inshaAllah ta'ala, we pray that we can learn about one of those great heroes. One of these great human beings that changed the course of history. But he called himself a dog when he prayed to Allah. One of these human beings that when the people, the generals of the army came and asked for money, and he said, "Don't spend so much money on the scholars." He said, "Of course I will spend money on the scholars. They are my army who shoots arrows at night into the enemy by raising their hands in dua." One of these heroes who would cry like a newborn child, begging Allah to give victory to His men under His command. This great hero that we'll talk about tonight is Nurideen al-Zanki, rahimahullah. Nurideen al-Zanki. He lived at a time when the Ummah was in great peril, when the dangers had surrounded the Ummah, and the Ummah was divided. And much like today, there was trouble in every area of the Ummah. The Ummah was in a very shameful state. This is when Nurideen al-Zanki, he came, and he started leading people. What Nurideen al-Zanki, first of all, he was of Turkish origin. And some of the scholars, they say there were two people that were the hujjas of Allah against all the kings. Two people that Allah uses as a proof that the kings can be great and righteous people. Two of them. Who are they? I mentioned one, Nurideen al-Zanki. Who's the other? The great righteous Muslim ruler and scholar, but he came later, who freed Palestine from the from the Crusaders, Salahuddin Ayubi. These are the two. The scholars, they mention in their books that these two are a proof against all the later kings. That, you can be a later king and still be a great and righteous king. In fact, some of the historians, they called Nurideen al-Zanki the sixth rightly guided Khalifa. Subhanallah. Who were the four? We know the four. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. Who's the fifth? Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And some scholars, they added a sixth. Nurideen al-Zanki. And inshallah, we'll tell you some of his great manaqib, some of his great his positions that he took. But Nurideen al-Zanki, he was Turkish in origin. And Salahuddin Ayubi, do you know what his origin was? Kurdish. Subhanallah. This here, right away, when we hear these two names, and we hear that they were not even Arab in origin, subhanallah, what do we realize? Do the Muslims achieve victory due to nationalism? Right away we realize that Allah, He will give victory to His people. It doesn't matter what color they are, or what nationality, what language they have. If they have ikhlas, and they have the following of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah will use people in every time and place. So Nurideen al-Zanki, in the world that he lived in, was the 5th century of the Hijrah. And what happened in the 5th century of the Hijrah is that the whole Muslim world was collapsing. The Khilafah in Baghdad had become very weak after the death of Mu'tasim. Mu'tasim, you heard of, he's the great ruler. When he died, then the Abbasid Khalifa in Baghdad became very weak. And some Turkish people, some Turkish army, they controlled it, and they were Rafidah, Shias, extreme Shias. In Egypt, you had the Fatimid rulers. Fatimids are also Rafidah, they're also extreme Shia, and they had a lot of innovations. And some of them even claimed to be the kings of Egypt, the Fatimids. They claimed uluhiyah. This is how extreme they became in their Shiism. They claimed even divinity, some of them. And you had in Andalus, when we talked about Yusuf ibn Tashfin, at that time, what happened to Andalus? After the Khilafah fell in Andalus, every town had its own Amir al-Mu'mineen, mashallah. Every city had their own Khilafah. Basically, emirates that were all fighting each other. So all over the Muslim world, the Muslims were in a state of weakness and humiliation. The Shias controlled Baghdad, the Shias controlled Egypt, a lot of innovations, and in Andalus, Muslims were weak. And Palestine, what happened? Do you know what happened to Palestine in the 5th century? You heard of the Crusaders? This was one of the greatest calamities that afflicted the Ummah. One of the popes, he announced in France, he said that the Muslims have urinated on the grave of Jesus. This is what they said. And they even made carpets, and they showed a picture of a Muslim urinating on a grave that they thought is Jesus' grave. We know as Muslims, Isa doesn't have a grave. But they spread this in Europe to incite the masses. Go and free the grave of Jesus from these Muslim infidels. And so they went in masses, and they killed not only Muslims. Many people don't know that as they progressed towards Palestine, when they passed through Turkey, they killed hundreds of thousands of Christians from a different denomination. They're called Orthodox Christians. They killed hundreds of thousands. And then when they entered Jerusalem, they occupied Palestine, they occupied Syria, Aleppo, the whole, what they call Levant or the Sham. All of this was occupied by the Crusaders. So you see the condition of the Muslim Ummah. You see how terrible it was. In the middle of all of this, Nurideen al-Zanki, he becomes the ruler of a little town called Aleppo, a little city. It's a small city in northern Syria. He became the ruler. This was in 541 Hijri. And from that little town, 8 years later, he became the Khalifa, he became the ruler, and he spread out, and his army conquered all the way to Persia in the east, and all the way to Morocco and Andalus in the west, all the way as far north as Turkey and as far south as Yemen before he died. In the span of 20 years, his army was able to spread out and, mashallah, reach that vast amount of territory. What did Nurideen al-Zanki do to accomplish this? This is, inshallah, the biggest lesson that I pray that I learned tonight and we all learn tonight. How did Nurideen al-Zanki pave the way for opening Jerusalem? Remember, historically, Nurideen al-Zanki, he came before Salahuddin Ayubi. He was the elder. Salahuddin Ayubi was actually one of the commanders under Nurideen al-Zanki. Salahuddin Ayubi, he was the commander over Egypt before he became the ruler and he took back Palestine, right? We all know Salahuddin liberated the Bayt al-Maqdis, the Masjid al-Aqsa. Everybody knows that part. But most people don't know that Nurideen al-Zanki paved the way. And in fact, the historians say Nurideen al-Zanki was greater than Salahuddin Ayubi. He was the one who appointed Salahuddin Ayubi and paved the way for him. And in fact, Nurideen al-Zanki built a mihrab, he built a minbar in Aleppo, and he made a huge minbar, and he said, this is the minbar that's going to go in Jerusalem once we conquer it. And it was built, and it was a huge minbar. It's called al-Minbar al-Nuriya, and it still existed until 30 years ago. And there's pictures of it on the internet. That minbar, that Nurideen al-Zanki, he was so confident in Allah, Allah will give them back Jerusalem. He already had the minbar waiting. And 30 years ago, the Yahud burned it down in Aleppo. So Nurideen al-Zanki paved the way for Salahuddin Ayubi, and he is the one who deserves more credit, in fact, the historians say, than Salahuddin Ayubi. So what did Nurideen al-Zanki do? What do we know about him? First of all, Nurideen al-Zanki was not just a ruler or a typical king. He was a scholar, and he narrated hadith. And the historians, they mentioned that his gatherings of hadith were so similar to the gatherings of the Sahaba. They said if you entered and Nurideen al-Zanki is narrating hadith, you would see the people sitting still like birds were sitting on their heads, right? You've heard that expression before? Who did that? The Sahaba did that, right? With the Prophet. So Nurideen al-Zanki's gatherings, he was a scholar. He was a muhaddith. He loved hadith. And not only that, not only did he love knowledge, but he spent his money on the knowledge. And he built madaris. He was Hanafi. He was from Turkey. That was the madhab he learned. But he didn't limit his building of schools to only his school, the Hanafi madhab. He built, and I've been there in Syria myself, and I saw many old buildings. Now they locked them up, but it was written on it, built by Nurideen al-Zanki. Nurideen al-Zanki built all of the schools, and basically he through his building of these schools, he laid the ground, he prepared the foundation for Salahuddin to come and take back Masjid al-Aqsa. So he has the credit of spending a vast amount of money all over the Muslim world, but especially in Syria and Damascus. And when he used to do this, he used to cry to Allah in his du'as. And he narrated many of his famous du'as. He said, "Oh Allah, have mercy on the Ashir al-Makis. Oh Allah, have mercy on..." And he would blame himself, because Ashir al-Makis means a person who takes taxes. So he said, "Oh Allah, please have mercy on me. I have to take the taxes from the people." But he was forced to do that, to spend on defending the Ummah. But he would blame himself. He would say, "Oh Allah, please have mercy on me. Please have mercy on me." So some of his generals, they came to him, I mentioned earlier, and they said, "Nurideen, you're spending too much money on these schools. We have battles to fight." And he fought personally, Nurideen al-Zanki fought 30 battles against the Crusaders in 20 years of ruling. He himself fought 30 battles, and he used to pray to Allah. Listen to this dua, Allahu Akbar. These duas are amazing of these righteous people. He said, "Oh Allah, resurrect my body. I pray that you resurrect my body from the stomachs of birds and scavengers." Say, what is this dua? What he meant is, make me a martyr on the battlefield, and I'm the only one there, so nobody recovers my body except the birds and the scavengers eat it. I want to be the hero on the battlefield. This is what he used to say. Can you imagine this kind of human being? He's the Sultan, the ruler. Oh Allah, resurrect my body from these birds. I don't want to die a nice, comfortable death, on my bed. But subhanAllah, Allah answered his dua in a different way. He didn't die on the battlefield, but he died from what they call khanq, a kind of disease that squeezes the throat. And so perhaps he had the reward of shahada. So Nurideen al-Zanki, he used to, whenever he went to battle, he used to cry like a baby. And there's one battle that's narrated about him, very amazing, that the people, he had sent Salahuddin. He had sent Salahuddin to go and protect a town in northern Egypt. And only a small army remained with him. He only had a small army of about 9,000. And the rest, they had all gone to Egypt to protect a town. There's a town in northern Egypt where the Nile runs into. The Crusaders would always attack that town so they could control the Nile going into the Mediterranean Sea, right? They wanted to have control of that port city. So the Crusaders were attacking that town. So he sent his army with Salahuddin. He only had a few men, 9,000 men left. So the Crusaders, taking advantage, they sent 30,000 of their best fighters called the Knights of Templar. You might have heard of these. They lionize them in Western literature. Knights of Templar, shining army, best equipment, horses, everything. So 30,000 army, they sent to Aleppo. And because they knew that the rest of the Nurideen's army is busy in Egypt, so Nurideen and his 9,000 men facing 30,000 of the Knights of Templar. This is like the SEALs, you could say. This is the best of the army of the Crusaders. So what should he do? What do you think his advisors told him? Nurideen, he got his advisors together. They said, go back to Aleppo and lock all the gates. And stay in the fortress until the attack is over. And by the time they run out of supplies, they'll go back. So Nurideen al-Zanki, he didn't take any decision without praying istikhara. He used to pray a lot of istikhara to Allah. So in that night, he went and he prayed istikhara, and the istikhara said, go and fight them. Go and fight the Knights of Templar. So Nurideen al-Zanki, he went and he fought the Knights of Templar, and what happened? Nurideen, he knew that it was going to be a tough fight. So he took the dirt and he rubbed it on his face. He took the dirt and he rubbed the dirt on his face, and then he said, "Oh Allah," and he pointed at his own army, and he pointed at the Crusader army. He said, "Oh Allah, these are your enemies. They have come to fight your religion." And "Oh Allah," and he pointed at his own army, and he said, "Oh Allah, these are your friends, and they are coming to give victory to your religion. So, oh Allah, don't give my army victory because of Mahmud," his first name is Mahmud, the dog. He said, "Oh Allah, don't give victory to the Muslim army because of Mahmud, the dog, but give victory to the Muslim army because these are your friends and they are fighting your enemies." Subhanallah. He called himself a dog. He is the Sultan of the Muslim army. And what happened? They fought a fierce battle, and the Muslims, they defeated the Knights of Templar. And they captured two of the best of their men. These were two like elite generals, and they kept them for 15 years. These were very, very, very valuable prisoners. Salahuddin, 15 years later, he traded them for some great benefit. So he conquered, he defeated them, and only a few of them remained behind. Only a few of them remained behind. So Salahuddin, this is Nurideen al-Zanki. This is the way that that he was. Another time, very interesting. Another time there was a battle, and the Muslims, they captured a very, very valuable general from the Crusaders. And this general, he used to get captured a lot, but he had a lot of money and a lot of backing, so they would get captured and they would spend a lot of money. The Christian army would pay the money to get him back, the ransom. So they kept on doing this. Every time he would get ransom, but then he would come back and fight the Muslim army again. So finally they captured him again. And then they asked the Muslims, what should we do? What should we do with this guy? Every time we take the ransom, and they would pay a lot of money for him, 100,000 gold pieces. It's a lot of money. But every time we let him go, he comes back and fights. So this time, the Muslims said, no, don't let him go. Keep him in prison. Don't let him go, because if you ransom, he'll just come back. Keep him locked up. Because he's going to harm us. If you ransom him, it's going to come back against us. Nurideen al-Zanki, what did he do? Nurideen al-Zanki, he prayed istikhara. What did the istikhara say? Keep him as a prisoner, or take the ransom and let him go. The istikhara said the opposite. It said, take the money. Don't keep him in prison, take the money, let him go. But the Muslim generals, they would be very angry. They said, you let him go again? So Nurideen al-Zanki, he said, okay, let him out at night when nobody sees him, because if they see him going out, they might attack him or do something to him. So he followed the istikhara, the prayer that he had from Allah, and so he let the general go, and they took the 100,000 dinars. 100,000 dinars, by the way, dinar is a gold or silver? Gold. That's a lot of money. So he took the money, he went against the generals, he let the Muslim generals, he let the Christian general go at night. The morning when he arrived, the Christian general, to his people, he died. Allah took his life. So Nurideen, the decision he took, he got both. He got the money, and the soldier was finished anyway. If he had kept him in army, he would have died. Probably, they wouldn't have gotten anything. So he took the 100,000 dinars, and then he told the Muslim generals, I'm not giving you any of this money. He didn't want me to take this ransom. And he took it and he spent it on a hospital called the Bimaristan an-Nuri. And it's still there. There's still some places there in Syria. Walaikum salam. It's still there in Syria. And that was considered the best hospital in the whole world. And Ibn Jubayr, he was from Spain. He used to travel the world. There's a book called Travels of Ibn Jubayr. So he writes, Ibn Jubayr, I never saw a hospital like this. Amazing hospital. Such an advanced hospital. And it was free for the poor. See, look at subhanAllah, Nurideen. He made this hospital. For the poor, it's free. For the rich, they're not allowed in unless they cannot get the cure anywhere else. If there's other hospitals, they can pay and go to those hospitals. If you want to come to this hospital, no. Only if we're the only ones that have the doctors and the cure for it. That was the hospital that Nurideen al-Zanki built. It's called Bimaristan an-Nuri. It still exists. I visited it. And it has different places. They had hospital beds. Back then they had rooms basically. And you can see, subhanAllah, it's still there. They have the rooms, and this is where they would put people who had mental problems, people who had different problems. Subhanallah. So that was his so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How else? Not only on the battlefield, but also in terms of his ruling, he was very just. And this, I'll share a couple more stories with you, inshallah ta'ala. At least beneficial, inshallah. At least, alhamdulillah. I was amazed when I heard some of these things. One thing that he did in Damascus again, he built a place called Dar al-Adl, the House of Justice. Still there also, a big, huge building. And he built that place, and he used to go there himself 4 days a week. And anybody who has a problem or has a complaint against any of his people, they can go there and make their complaints in front of him. It's called Dar al-Adl, mashallah. So that place, he built that place, and when he built it, there was a particular ruler of one of the places, one of the towns, he was so tough that none of the judges would go against him. He was like really, really, tough. The judges were afraid to make a judgment against him. But when Nurideen built the Dar al-Adl, that ruler got scared. And he said, I'm afraid if I wrong somebody, they're going to go to that Dar al-Adl and they're going to complain to me in front of Nurideen. And I don't want to be embarrassed. So then he started giving everybody their rights back. And he told all of his workers, make sure you give everybody their right. And then when he died, he was poor because he had to give all the money back that he had taken away from the people. So this is one of the things that Nurideen accomplished. He built that Dar al-Adl, and it's still there in Damascus. I saw it a few years ago. What else did Nurideen do, inshaAllah? How did he pave the way for the conquering of Jerusalem, for Salahuddin? A few things here. One of the things that he did, of course, he built the madaris, but he also, when he told Salahuddin to conquer, when the Crusaders attacked, he used to send messages, pigeons, to Salahuddin in Egypt, and he used to say, did you conquer the Crusaders yet? Every few days he would send a pigeon, and there was a town there where the Nile ends, that port city called Dimyata. And Dimyata got captured by the Crusaders. So he used to keep sending the pigeons there with the messages. Did you capture Dimyata yet? To Salahuddin. And he refused to give up on this. He kept on pushing Salahuddin. We have to get Dimyata back from the Crusaders. And it said that he never smiled when Dimyata was captured by the Crusaders. He refused to smile. And some students of hadith came to him and they wanted to learn some hadith from him. And one of those hadith, they have something called musalsal hadith, where when the Prophet ﷺ, he smiled, then the narrator who narrates the hadith, he has to also smile. Or just like there's a hadith, the merciful ones, Allah, the merciful, has mercy on them. And then the narrator, the Prophet ﷺ said, Inni uhibbuk, I love you for the sake of Allah. So each narrator, as the hadith goes down, he has to do the same thing. He has to narrate the hadith, and then he has to tell the student, I love you for the sake of Allah. Just the way the Prophet ﷺ did in the beginning. That's called musalsal. Or if the narrator shakes hands, so each way down the chain he has to shake the hands. So what happened? Nurideen had a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ smiled. So each narrator has to smile as he narrates the hadith. So the hadith students came to Nurideen Zanki, and they said, we want to hear this hadith from the Prophet ﷺ where he smiled. And so Nurideen, he narrated the hadith, but he didn't smile. So the student said, why not? Why didn't you smile? That's part of the hadith, and we want to get the correct ijazah, the correct narration of the hadith. So Nurideen Zanki said, how can I smile when Dimyata is in the hands of the Crusaders? He refused to laugh or smile. And subhanAllah, that mawqif, that position that he had, subhanAllah, that seriousness that he had. That, how can I smile when the condition of the Ummah is the way it is? Nowadays, we see the whole Muslim world is in the condition that it's in. Palestine is the way it is, Jerusalem, Masjid al-Aqsa. And not to mention the hadith, we laugh about everything. Always laughing, So the question here is, the point here is that he was so serious about getting the lands back from the Crusaders. Subhanallah. Now, a couple of things before Nurideen died, which is very amazing, something very, very amazing. Before he died, an imam came to him, one of the imams of the town, and the imam said to Nurideen, actually, before I jump the gun here, the imam had a dream. And in the dream, he saw the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ told that imam that Dimyata will be recaptured by the Muslims. The Muslims will get it back from the Crusaders. So the imam, he says, how am I going to... the Prophet ﷺ told that imam, go and give Nurideen Zanki the good news, because he was dying. So he said, go and give him the good news before he dies. So the Imam, he said, Nurideen Zanki is a very serious man. He's not going to just believe any dream. As you know, dreams are not revelation. He's not going to accept this dream. Give me some sign, something to prove to him that is really from Allah. That's really that from the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, tell Nurideen Zanki that they will be given victory, and the Muslim army will be given victory in answer to your dua the night that you prayed for the capturing against the Crusader army north of Aleppo. When you prayed in your sajda, O Allah, give victory to your friends over your enemies. Not because of the dog Mahmud, but because these are your friends and those are your enemies. So the Prophet ﷺ told that Imam in his dream, tell that to Nurideen Zanki. That way he'll know that this is truly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved that dua, and he, out of his humility. So what happened? The Imam, he goes to Nurideen Zanki. He said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ in a dream, and he told me that the Muslims will take back Dimyata from the Crusaders. So Nurideen Zanki, he said, tell me, how do I know this is true? And then the Imam said, didn't you, there was a battle for the fortress above Aleppo, and you prayed to Allah at night, and Allah appreciated it. But the Imam felt shy to say, give victory to the Muslim army, not because of the dog Mahmud. He didn't use the word dog. He was shy, speaking to the Sultan. He's not going to call him dog. So he left that part out. So then Nurideen, he kept asking him, did he say anything else? Did you see anything else in the dream? So finally he said, yes, the Prophet ﷺ did say something. He said that you made a dua that, oh Allah, give victory to the Muslim army against your enemies, because these are your friends and those are the enemies of your religion, not because of the dog Mahmud. And then Nurideen Zanki, he said, yes, this is from Allah. Only Allah knew that. He said that in his dua. SubhanAllah. So Nurideen Zanki, rahimahullah, he indeed, when he passed away, Salahuddin Ayubi, he took over and he captured not only Egypt, but then he went and he captured Jerusalem back from the Crusaders. But you see here the lesson that we learn from Nurideen Zanki is that the Muslims didn't get victory from slogans and speeches and yelling. And how did they get victory? From this kind of connection that Nurideen Zanki had with Allah. This kind of utter humility, putting himself as a dog, nothing. And Allah is, he's begging Allah, he's humbling himself, breaking himself for Allah, is asking for Allah's help. This is amazing that we learn a king, a ruler, that's the kind of ruler we need. That's the kind of leader we need. Somebody who will put himself and call himself a dog in front of Allah, crying like a baby, begging Allah's help, and having that sila, that tie with Allah, that he's praying istikhara for everything. And he's going against all of his commanders. Are you going to fight them? He said he prayed the istikhara. That is the sila, that is the connection that he had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said, don't spend the money on the schools, we need it for the army. We need to make the army strong, get more tanks, more airplanes. What did he say? He said, these scholars are my arrows that I shoot at night. These scholars are arrows against the enemy that I throw at them at night. What did he mean? Those ulama are making dua for him. When they pray at night, their dua goes up to Allah. Those are the arrows that Allah will use against the enemies. Those are what will give us victory. Not money, not slogans, not speeches, not all of these things. What will give us victory? If we go back and we really connect ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was Nurideen Zanki. May Allah have mercy on him. May Allah bring more of those great heroes back in our ummah, inshaAllah ta'ala. May Allah make us like them. May Allah give us love for them. And may He let the world learn about these great heroes, inshaAllah ta'ala, and appreciate them and make us more like them, inshaAllah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah accept from all of you, and may Allah forgive us, inshaAllah. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Is there any questions, inshaAllah? Okay, the uluhiyya, maybe, I'm sorry I used that word. What happened is there were some rulers basically in Egypt in the Fatimid dynasty, and some of those rulers, they even claimed to have divinity. They claimed to have some divine powers. I can't remember the names. There was, I think, one of them, like Malik, I think his name was Malik or something like that. He was in Egypt, and he claimed that he had divine powers. So this was kind of the innovations, that not only did they say that there are imams and so on, but he claimed himself that he had the divine powers. So this is the kind of innovations that was spreading in the Ummah. And Nurideen, he was, of course, Hanafi, Sunni, and he was bringing the people away from those innovations. So, this is something that, the deviations were going away from the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and he brought the Ummah back to the Sunnah, inshallah.
Yes. It's very unfortunate that still today in the subcontinent and in Africa,
yes,
some of the people associate the same divinity power with the dead. They claim, maybe they weren't absolutely righteous Muslims that died, but they claim that by going to their graves you benefit from the divinity or by all those. So it's
Allah,
very unfortunate that still.
Allahu Akbar. Wallah, this is no doubt one of the obstacles to pure Islam. When we have these kind of superstitions, not only have we weakened our connection to Allah, not like Nurideen, but we go to graves, we go to saints and ask from them. So some ulama, they mentioned this statement. It's not my own statement. This is what the scholars, they said, that we are the ummah of tawheed. The more that we practice tawheed, the more Allah will strengthen us and make us strong. And the more we deviate from it, the more that Allah will humiliate us. Our destiny is connected to the message that we carry. If we carry the message, then our destiny will be good, and if we betray the message, then we will be in a state of humiliation. So when you have an imam like that, when you have the ruler who is completely relying upon Allah, we take all the means. Islam doesn't say that we don't prepare ourselves, we make, work, try our best. In Nurideen, he did everything physically available. But in the end, they have a statement in Arabic. They say, take the means as if they are everything. Then trust in Allah as if the means are nothing. تأخذ الأسباب كأنها كل شيء ثم توكل على الله كأنها ليس بشيء. Take every means available to you as if the means is everything. But then put your trust in Allah as if the means are not even there. You tried your best. You did everything in your power to do something, get a job, or to give da'wah. You tried your best to give the message. And then in the end, you say, my effort is nothing. Allah, it is in your hands. If you want, accept it from me. Give me this job. Give me this wife. Give me this victory and help in the da'wah. And leave it up to Allah. So this is the way that our scholars teach us. We shouldn't leave the means. This is also not the way of our predecessors. He did everything. He prepared the armies. He led the armies himself. He even built a minbar before they even conquered Jerusalem. So he made the means. He thought ahead of plan. He made plans. He did everything. But he did the istikhara. See how many times we do things, we don't even pray istikhara. We think, we did all the planning, we did everything perfect. But did we forget one thing? Did we make istikhara to Allah? In the end, it's not going to be us. It's Allah's help, right? So we should never forget that. We should always make istikhara in everything. Even the Sahaba said we made istikhara for little things. any matter. So that's something beautiful in the life of Nurideen Zanki. That he made him shura with his generals, but then he always prayed istikhara. And subhanAllah, sometimes his istikhara was different. And this happens sometimes. You think something, and then your istikhara gives you the different answer. And Allah is pushing you a different way. And perhaps there's some wisdom in that. You know, they said, the istikhara said, let the prisoner go. Take the money. SubhanAllah, Allah knew something. This is a very important lesson, mashallah. Jazakallah khair. And yes, you're right, brother. You know, this problem we have in our countries, we have to work to spread knowledge, educate our Muslims, inshallah. It's a very good comment. Jazakallah khair. Any other questions, inshallah? Jazakumullah khairan wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi sallam. May Allah accept from all of us. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan.